Finally, I made it to Leh. By the way, there will be wind here. I cannot avoid it. That's why I'm standing in a corner, trying to reduce the impact. But it's very high. I mean, I think this is the highest point, and so I thought, well, why not go to the highest point if I can? So, like you can see in front of us, like there's a mountain range. Let us say we have to, for some reason, uh, let us say you are a person on a cycle who wants to go to Manali, and you know Manali is in that direction. What do? You have to cross that mountain, right? You can't just walk and cross the mountain. Some people do that, but they're called mountaineers. If you're like trying to do stuff other than cross mountains, you need a more reasonable way of crossing mountains. So that is what mountain passes are. People have traveled for a long time, and they have found those very natural points where it is relatively easier to cross. Of course, doesn't make it very simple, and so there are three factors maybe. The first factor is the time of the year. If it is in the winters, there is just too much snow, and there will be like meters of snow in places. But in the summers, when the snow will melt away, there might be a way to cross it. The second factor uh, is the height. Now, of course, people in the mountains are more acclimatized to the height, but for people from outside the mountains who are not as acclimatized, like myself, the altitude itself is a big problem, and people's bodies behave differently. Some people don't find that to be a big problem. Some people find it to be a discomfort. Some people like myself, that is actually one of the biggest problems in crossing over, that you at very high peak altitudes, the body does not really like it, and weird things start happening to your mind, and it can get fatal also. There is nothing much you can do about it. There are like small like medicines and their tricks, and you can have an oxygen cylinder and stuff. The only real solution, if you are having those altitude sicknesses in a very severe form, is to get down to a lower height. Now again, repeating this is maybe important, that it doesn't happen to everyone. It rarely happens. It might happen to people, and they might get small symptoms, they might get nausea, they might get vomiting, uh, but it can get bad. So yeah, so by the time of the year, the altitude itself, then there is the question, like not all mountain passes are the same. Some have a simpler terrain, some have a worse terrain, and then there's one more final factor, which is the weather on that particular day. And actually saw it firsthand. uh, one of the passes I crossed was in perfect weather, and one of the passes I passed was in a snowstorm, and it was very bad. So yeah, uh, like this actually goes for the entire journey from Manali to Leh. I would say that everyone will have a different experience based on the mode of travel you are taking, the time of the year you are in, the weather on those particular days, and you might come off thinking of it either as the most leisurely trip you had, or a near like a fatal sort of a very bad trip, a very risky trip. There are still too many variables in this route for it to have a consistent experience. And yeah, so okay, so now that we sort of understand what mountain passes are, so there are four mountain passes which come on the way from Manali to Leh, but the first two, so it's not that the middle two are not that difficult. It is more that in terms of dividing a terrain, I think the first two are more important. The first pass which comes from the Manali side coming towards Leh is Baralachala, and the last pass which comes is Tanglangla. So what I roughly in my mind, I split the journey. I mean, now I can split the journey into three parts depending on the terrain I saw. And so then there is stuff before Baralachala, then there is stuff between Baralachala and Tanglangla, and then there is Tanglangla and onwards. Okay, so yeah, so I set out from Darcha, so that in the morning the police was still not allowing people to go on. I like really had to beg my case, because it looked like the weather that day was very good, brilliant weather, and it had not snowed the night before. There were some people who were still stuck up, and like, but they were starting to come down, so it was apparent that the road will reopen sometime in that day, but in the morning it was not open. And I was like, really, I wanted to head out early, because for me the biggest variable I can control is the time I can spend on the road. I mean, I can't drastically increase my speed, I can't reduce the distance or the difficulty of the uphill climb. What I can do is I can maximize the amount of time I spend on the road to make it, like, make it easy for me. That's the easiest thing I can do. So I wanted to head out early. After like trying to convince the person in charge there a lot, that since the road will reopen anyways around 12 or 1, why doesn't he let me go, because I need to cover, like, I'll be much slower reaching the top. So finally he let me go at around 8:30. And I mean, that day I have to say everything that, like, went perfect for me. Everything. The only thing which could have gone better was if I had started off by, let us say, 7. But yeah, we are getting too far ahead. So I started on, and yeah, since there were some cars coming from the top, and then after that there was a bunch of trucks, but it was very low traffic because the traffic from my side was not open yet. So that actually worked in my favor, sort of, because, like, I had the open road, there was less noise. Then after that you can get the first glimpse of where the pass will be. You can't tell it, and I know this now because I crossed the pass. You can sort of guess that is where the pass will be, but it's not very apparent also. But anyway, so when you enter that valley-ish region, where you will continue on to the pass, there's a place called Zing Bar. So that is a settlement of, like, BRO, the Border Roads Organization. And I mean, starting from this point onwards, this theme will continue, that there are, although there will be people and there will be villages, they are not really there. Firstly, there are, like, very few permanent settlements, and if they are not on the main, sort of, the only and the main road. The uh, places you get in the middle are not really villages which have become more of, like, tourist places. It is just pseudo, or let's say they are very recently created, so that the journey is not like hundreds of kilometers without any places in the middle. So we come to Sing Sing Bar, and the good thing about that place is, so that is where most of the people who had gotten stuck at night would have stayed, I imagine, because there are dhabas there. And again, it's not whole year long, but at this point there are dhabas there, and you can get, like, tea and food and stay also there. It's already pretty high, and one way I could have structured my journey was to stay at Sing Sing Bar, and that was an option I was strongly considering, because it was already, like, I don't remember the exact time, but it was beyond 12, and I still had to go to Baralachala. And although it is only 20 kilometers, from what I remember, from Sing Sing Bar to Baralachala, I mean, those are very hard 20 kilometers. So the sort of a downside there is Sing Sing Bar is at quite a height also, so you have to make sure that you have acclimatized yourself to that height. Okay, yeah, so I continued on. Like, I had to switch from my normal glasses to sunglasses, and it's like there's nothing there, and it's just like snow, and you're very high. It's very hard to explain how high you are, that you're at the, like, top of the mountain, but for multiple, like, hours, because it looks like you can reach the top very quickly, but you can't. I mean, so the road goes very like, curvy, and this is for the better, actually, because, like, it's very hard, at least for me it was very hard to, like, breathe there, and like, putting in effort, like even on that gradual slope was hard, and it's a trade-off. You could have made the road shorter, but it would have been steeper, and since there you can't really exert yourself. Or I mean, this actually goes for vehicles also, trucks and everything. The problem they have is that their axles break because of the load and the steepness of the road. So I mean, it is not for cyclists that they make the road the slope gradual. They make it for like other vehicular traffic also. So yeah, that was a very hard 20 kilometers for me. And the trouble I was having was because of the snow. All the milestones had been covered. Like I sort of lost track of how much further I had to go, and I was like, I was starting to get symptoms of like altitude sickness again. It has happened with me earlier also, so I knew it was like I knew what was happening, but at the same time it was very like I mean, the day was also beginning to go get on, and it was like almost 3:30, and I didn't really know where I was, how much further I had to go, how much longer will it take on the other side. I was like, I had just hoped that it will be downhill from there, which is a very good assumption, but I didn't know it for a fact. And I mean, I guess in the worst case, what I could have done is I could have come back to Zingzingbar. Uh, so yeah, I mean, now it occurs to me. It was not occurring to me at that point, which can give you a sense of how screwed my like thinking was, because I was not able to think very straight, and I was getting like sort of bad symptoms. And yeah, so I'm not trying to exaggerate the difficulty. If like it can be very simple for people, but for me it was a struggle. And I yeah kept on going, because I mean, it wasn't very like, there was no very dangerous thing which was happening, but it was not. Again, this is where starting 1 hour or 1.5 hours earlier would have helped a lot, because if it was like 1 in the afternoon when I was at that point, I would have been much calmer. So I think it was around 4 when I finally reached the pass. I mean, it suddenly came out of a corner, and there were like people standing there, and there was the pass. And yeah, I was thrilled. So I mean, at that point I was thinking that once I cross Paralachala, the trip will be done. That's what the impression I had, because like I hadn't researched at all. I knew generally that there will be places to stay, but I didn't. So in my mind, it was like Paralachala was the like thing I had to do. Everything else will be easy. How wrong was I? But yeah, that I mean, that was a relief, and I reached the top. And yes, so then I got like very happy and relaxed. My brakes were all working fine, so like I made good distance. And very fast I was able to go downhill. I also wanted to go downhill because my body wanted to go downhill. I was not liking it at that altitude. So yeah, I think in 1 hour I reached Sarju. So the so this is the first shift which happened. Then I was saying that there is the region before Paralachala, that is a different terrain. After you cross over to Sarju, it's a very different thing, and this is common for passes. Like this is the thing which the Atal tunnel, and which used to be the Rohtang pass, does. Like there is Manali on one side, and then there is Lahore on the other side, and they're very different ecosystems and terrains. So the same sort of happened with Paralachala. There was Lahore before it, and then after you cross over, there is this like I would get to see it more the next day, but already before Sarju you can see like big plains, and it's like the mountains are of a different kind. The terrain changed, so that is the we are on the second sort of a section of the journey. Yeah, and I stayed in Sarchu at night. It's like sort of a reverse Darcha, because that is where the checkpost is for people coming towards Manali from Baralachala. So there was a line of trucks there, and but otherwise it is just like it's a dusty uh, sort of a place which is again, it's not a real place. There is a village which is nearby across the river where people used to live, but this place is now basically there because BRO needed a place to set up headquarters, and this is a convenient place to like put up a check post, and then that is why now there are like dhabas there, and like people stay there. There are many camps there. That was the coldest day so far in my entire trip. It was really cold. Like I left out like I had a water bottle, and by the morning that was frozen. Although even though it was inside the tent. Uh, yeah, I don't know why it was the case, because after Serchu I went to higher places also, but for some reason that place was the coldest. Maybe that day there was something that day. Uh, but like, so the thing there is that it's very windy. This is true of the entire second like part of the journey. Like on the entire plains it is very windy, and but anyways, let's continue on. So the next day I started from Sarcho, and now what happens there is then there is a plain region for a while. I don't know, 20 kilometers. It's an excellent and very photogenic road because the tarmac is fresh. You can see like huge valleys. It's a very enjoyable ride, and so the road snakes along, and you get a plain area in the middle, and then you come to a point which is called the Kata Loops. Those are 21 curves which snake up to the mountain top, and so that is when the day really started for me, I guess. And yes, that was a lot. I don't know how much time I spent, um, but I did spend a lot of time, and again this was a struggle going uphill. And then because where the loops end, uh, from there on the road actually continues. That is when you get to the second pass, and that's quite a far ahead, and from where the loops end, because the loops end, then you take a turn, and I thought the pass will be there, but the pass wasn't there. The road continued on relatively straight, but higher it continued, and there were more loops. They were just not together. And so again, so okay, maybe to set context, what had happened was I had asked a person whose camp I was staying on, uh, where I should stop next. So he said we basically have only one option, which is there's a place called Whiskey Nala, and as you can get from the name, it's not a real place. It is a place which has been sort of set up, uh, I would imagine sort of pseudo intentionally, to have a place for people to halt, and the name is just like a, I guess, some inside joke among the BRO people, because before that there is a bridge called Brandy Bridge, this is Whiskey Nala, and there's a Whiskey Bridge. So I mean, I guess drunk officers naming things leads to this. So yes, that's the place. He said I should try to get to that day, because there is that was, I think, 45 kilometers from where I started. I have totally forgotten by now, but yeah, because 20 kilometers after that is a place called Pang, and that is the one which you see on milestones. You don't see Whiskey Nala on milestones. So I mean, I didn't even know if it existed, and Pang you see on the milestones, but yeah, so Pang would have been a bit too much, because there is another mountain pass before you reach Pang. It's not just the distance which matters. What happened is the sun was starting to go down, and I had no sight or no milestone which was saying Whiskey Nala, and there, like, the pass did not seem to be coming. Finally, sometime late evening, I came to the pass. From the pass, I could see that it was going downhill, and then I could see that after it will go downhill, it will then go back on the other hill, other mountain on the other side, presumably to the third pass in the trip. But this was not good news for me, because I like I would go down, and then there is another pass. There is nothing in the middle, and it was, the milestone was saying 20 kilometers to Pang. I did not have it in me to like do one more pass that day and to go 20 kilometers. 20 kilometers I could do, but I could not do one more pass that day. I could not climb that much. So luckily this was a problem only for, let's say, 2-3 minutes, because after I did two, 3 turns, then finally I saw that at the bottom of that valley there was a bunch of tents, which was presumably Whiskey Nala, and it was. So I reached there, I had food, I got place to stay in a tent. It's a dhaba. The people who are setting up the tents, they are all people who have come from Leh for the 5 months to earn some money. So yes, I stayed there, and it snowed at night. I mean, it wasn't too much snow. It was fine, not really a problem. Uh, Although I would figure out later why it will be a problem. But I was actually happy about the snow, because then I could see the same landscape in a different color. Yesterday I was seeing it without the snow, then today I could see it white and peppered with gray. So yes, yeah, I started that day, and it was nice going. Although it was uphill, I kept on sort of going on, and uh, like I was enjoying it also. Then I reached the pass relatively early, because I had started very early, and this it was okay. Now after this, what happened was, so that is when I figured out what is the problem with the snow, because by now the snow had stopped. But what had happened is, because all the trucks passing, all the snow had turned into slush. So that made the road very tricky. I was overestimating the grip I was getting. The slush stuck to my tires, and it was like very muddy, and I didn't realize that I should not be going that fast, and I fell. The tire just skid, and luckily, I mean, it was in a okay place, and I mean, I nothing got hurt more than my ego. I got up, then I continued on. By now I was just like fully mud, and I mean, my sort of pants got torn, but again, yeah, it didn't, it wasn't at least hurting that time, and I kept on going. Now after this comes very weird scenery. I mean, this is true for, let's say, I mean, other places also in this trip, but this is weird in a different way. It's like very, there's a small stream flowing next to not very high but very menacing looking mountains, and there's a sort of the road there is not sort of dirt road only, there is in tarmac, and it was great fun, because it's, I would say, it's either flat or downhill, gradually downhill from there, because you have already reached the pass, and then you keep on going and going, and then you reach a point where there is just a very magnificent place, and it's like a very narrow sort of a opening in the mountains, and then you realize that you have been very high, because see, what happens is, you have a river flowing next to the road, so you sort of get this impression that you are on level ground, but you are not. And when you come to this point, you realize that you are actually very high because there's a steep drop, and yes, so you come there, and then the interesting terrain continues for a while. There's a bit of a climb, and then you reach Pang. Had coffee and stuff there, and after Pang is a so again I asked around, so where I had asked at the last place I had stayed at night where I should go to. So he had suggested a place called Debring, because Pang was too early, and I had reached Pang I think by 12 or something. So he said, Pang is too early to stop, you should continue on, because after Pang there is just there's a small climb, and then it is just plains. So although it is 40 kilometers after Pang, but there's a place called I didn't even ask him the name, he just said there's a place where you will find places to stay. I started on, there was indeed a climb, but wasn't too much. Then after that comes the, again, a very unique area, which is just like how you can see a plane here. There was just a big huge plane there, and it continued on for like uh, it continues on for 50 kilometers. I had to cover 40 of them that day, and that place is a desert. I mean, there is nothing there. There is no electricity, there is no water. I mean, there are no villages there. And I mean, as I said, there are villages there, but those are villages are not really linked to the road. There's somewhere some you can't really see them, and there are temporary settlements of shepherds also, but otherwise there is nothing else there. You just keep on going for, like, it seems, forever. And since the road was gradually sloping downhill in the direction I was going, it was like great fun for me because I didn't have to like pedal that much. And by this time, so like I did good distance. Like I basically did 40 kilometers in a few hours, and not much effort, great fun. And uh, actually, because of the speed, what happened is, I mean, at some places I was going quite fast, and because of this, what happened is, the finally the cycle sort of the problem, like the jugaad which had been done sort of gave up, and the cycles started to bubble uh, a bit more violently than I would have liked. But I mean, at that point, there was no turning back. I knew this would happen at one point or the other. It was fine. I only had one pass left, and since, I mean, I was just not pedaling and just flowing along a very scenic highway, I was in very great mood. I just thought, like, I just have to make it to the last pass, and after that, if I have to, I'll just like walk along with the cycle. So yes, so now I reached that place. It was called Debring. uh, so there was a place to stay there, and that was very good advice I had gotten, because what happened is, I stayed there for the night and I had food. And after this, Tanglangla, which is the last pass, which is also incidentally the highest pass which will come in the entire journey, was 20 kilometers ahead. So uh, I mean, if I had stayed at Pang, doing the pass and then getting on the other side a place to stay would have been a problem. So this is like good stuff, because this gets me into a very good position for the next day, next morning. So the next day I woke up, all prepped to go, and it was very cloudy, and you could see from afar that it was sort of dark in the direction where, dark because of clouds in the direction where the pass was supposed to be. Thing about this pass is that this one you could see from very far. I remember the milestone 15 kilometers before the actual pass. You can see that up there in that mountain there's a road which is snaking at the very top. The slope is very gradual, and I, like, again, it took time. I think it took hours, multiple hours, but yes, I reached the top around 12, very happy. And I thought it was done, everything was done, because I mean, there was the last pass. This is the highest pass of the journey, and there was sort of a closure. I mean, for me, I think mentally, the journey sort of ended at that point. So then I started downhill, and first two things happened. Firstly, it was much darker and cloudier on this side, and you could tell that there had been a lot of snow, because there was a lot of slush on the road, and there was a long queue of trucks and stuff, because the road had become a one-way. I mean, it was not very big two-way, but it had become even more of a one-way, because there was a point where there was like so much slush and snow, and the BRO people were removing the snow, but it was like slow going, so they had to stop traffic, and only like one direction could pass slowly at a point. This is sort of near the top, maybe let's say 1 kilometer before the top. And yes, so the and it was also colder. So then this is a time when I actually wore all the, like, inner outer layers of clothing I had, and so yeah, I had stopped, wore the final jacket, and had water, had biscuits and stuff, put on my bag, started down, and then the snowstorm started. So uh, it's it was very sudden, but the timing had been so good, because it was so bad that I could not have stopped to even to wear the jacket and like have water or something, because like it was like constant barrage of snow in your face. It wasn't particularly cold or anything. It was just like you it is unexpectedly ferocious, that snowstorm was. and so I was really glad that I was going downhill. And in fact, if I had not been going downhill, I would not maybe have been able to continue, because just by the prospect of going further into a snowstorm, because this way I knew as I am going downhill the intensity will keep on decreasing, and plus anyways I'm like the whatever effects I was having, because I was also having a headache. I mean, I basically had like headache in various levels of intensity all throughout after crossing Baralachala, and but it had increased in intensity at the height of the pass. So like if I had to go uphill, then I don't think I had it in me to have continued on. But since I was going downhill, uh, like it was, I mean, there wasn't anything else to do, and it wasn't really hard. I had to, the only thing I had to do was make sure I didn't go too fast, because well, two things had happened. Firstly, because of all the like water, the melted snow, that like the brakes had sort of like reduced in intensity, and since yesterday that the bubbling had become more violent, so I mean the cycle was not in as good a condition as it was in Baralachala, so I could not have gone as fast anyways. So I went really slowly, made it downhill, and the storm stopped for me. Now so this is the third sort of a leg. This is where you sort of again come back into humanity, and after crossing Tangdangla. Now the terrain for this place is like very unique. There are like red mountains. There's a valley which continues for like 35 kilometers before it will meet the Indus Valley and the Indus River. Again, very unique scenery, and but it does look like Mars. So yes, that was a very idyllic, enjoyable 20 kilometers, 30 kilometers, and I continued on, reached the Indus Valley. There's a place with like homestays. By now it is like normal. That remote vibe is totally gone, and yes, I stayed there for the night. Leh is only 50 kilometers from there. I mean, I didn't have the energy. I could not have made it that day. The road is mostly downhill from there to Leh. That is what I did on the final day, and came to this hidden kingdom. You can sort of see why people used to live up high, so that you can see when, I don't know, Genghis Khan is trying to attack you, although I don't know how much good that will do you. Okay, so maybe I'll come down to a point where it's a bit less windy, and say goodbye.